Hey everyone, it's Deej here. Forgive me in advance because I'm battling a cold at the moment. My voice sounds alright right now, but it could go south very quickly and it's gonna be awful, so I'm just gonna rough through this video. So yes, my pitch. I opted to pick a game mechanic over game idea or story idea. I just couldn't think of something that I liked in the time we had, so whatever. And my idea or my decision on the gameplay mechanic is solely because I have not seen this done in Dreams yet. For all I know, um, I mean, I did a search last week and couldn't really find much. But this could be somebody's like private creation, for all I know. Um, you might think this is going to be lame on paper, especially when you compare this to traditional games, but I think it'd be pretty cool if we could somehow implement QTEs into our game. Uh, let's see here. Right, now this doesn't have to be like overly complicated in our game or even a main part of our game. I just think it'd be a cool fit for anyone's pitch, really, because for two reasons. One, we have so many kinds of QTEs to work with. Uh, like, think of games like God of War or Heavy Rain or Detroit Become Human or Spider-Man, to name a few. Uh, Different kinds of things we can think the logic for, make it work in our game, whatever that ends up being. And second, I realized this right away, or yeah, pretty much right away, that this will need to work from all departments in the team. So this is something that will involve everyone and not just a select few departments. So I thought that worked out pretty well. Excuse me. Um, so yeah, I'll do a demo on a kind of QT here because they're all sort of similar. But uh, I guess before that, I'm gonna preface this with saying that I am by no means a game developer. I am a web developer in real life, so I have zero knowledge or insight into game design or what even goes into making QTE, for example. So I've sort of winged my logic here. So this could end up being, completely different, you know, uh, when it comes time to actually apply this to our game if we decide to do it. Um, so yeah, I guess I'll start off with this logic that I have. That'll help me determine a couple things. One, if any button in your controller sensor is being pressed, and so far I have it hooked up to all your triggers, your L3, R3, and your face buttons. Um, like a 0 or 1 value for if any button is being pressed. That's what I want to know. And second, of those buttons, which one exactly you're pressing. So uh, right now I have a maxed out selector, but I can obviously add more. Oh god, excuse me. We can add more inputs for like say gyro inputs or analog stick inputs and stuff like that. Um, so like a numerical value for what button is being pressed. It's also a thing I want to know because you'll definitely need that for some QTEs. Um, right. So this QT here, this turned out to be the simplest one, and it's not the single prompt QT, surprisingly. Um, this is just one where we expect the player to mash a given button until your animation's done. So how this works, you first make your animation, or you have your timeline, and you set the playback mode to sustain. Um, then on the Qt microchip side, you hook up the progress output to your power, and then you can set the on-end trigger to one of my inputs here, the completed. Yeah, it's so simple. Like we don't even know when your animation is going to end, so we'll need that specifically to tell us that it's done, and then we just stop everything, so that like we don't affect anything. Uh, or what's the right word I'm trying to say? Um, so like the QTE doesn't expect like button prompts after it's done, sort of thing. And yeah, here's an input for that will let us know if we're currently in the QTE, so we can use this output to say trigger some post effects, like or a camera angle, for example. And then input for your actual button press. Um, and I have some extra, like a timer and a signal manipulator to help chop up your input. Because without it, you could simply hold this button down and send a continuous signal to your animation, and it'll defeat the purpose of the QTE. Like it'll just play normally until it's done. So I don't want. So this prevents that basically. Um, and finally, obviously, like I thought of accessibility options because those are, becoming, ever more important to include in games. So I thought that would be an option we can have in our game too. Um, and by skip, I guess I mean like simulate the QTE. So, because this one's like a button mash one, I can demonstrate this quickly with with my god awful cube animation that just goes up and then turns green when it's done. Because I can't animate to save my life. um, so yeah, I can show. Well, will it face me? Nope, it's not gonna face me. I gotta do that. So yeah, I can show you real quick here. So yeah, instead of my cube, you can picture a guy trying to open a chest or trying to open like a door, just generally struggling with something in the game. You can do that. And in the gameplay side, I can show you as well. Oh shoot, I should have turned that off. Whoops. Right, so I set the active input to the possession output in the controller sensor, so right now that just increases the vignette strength so we know something's happening or the QT is about to happen. And because this QT is so basic, there are no limits besides mash the button until it's done. I can sit here and nothing will happen, and I can mash the button and then stop, and then nothing happens. Like the game's just motionless right now until it's done, right? That's about it. I think that works. Although it kind of sucks because there has to be a delay for some reason. Like if I set this to 0, like that's just too quick for that to register. So like nothing happens. So like this has to be like this has to be 0.1, and then these have to be 0.1 for this to actually register. So oh well, I tried with that. Like it works, but I don't know if you think that looks kind of weird. I don't know. I think it looks okay, but you never know. So yeah, that's just one demonstration. Here's another kind of QT where it's basically the same thing, but now there's like a timer on whenever you're inactive during the QTE. So I try to prevent people from, you know, not pressing the button. So like there's a fail state for, if you just sit still, basically. Um, and with an extra input and a couple extra outputs, you can see this gets a little bit more complicated. But don't worry, right now the thermo is still fairly good. um, like I imagine if we go forward with using QTs in our game that I'll make more of these for however many QTs we think up of and just delete which ones we don't need to save up on thermo. But yeah, anyway, with this new inactivity output, for example, we can hook that up to say like a rumbler so that you'll get feedback for whenever you're not pressing buttons, so you know to press buttons. Otherwise, you're gonna fail. um, Finally, I have the single prompt QTE, which turned out to be stupidly more complicated than the other two. And all I'm doing is excuse me, an extra input for time limit, for the expected button, for the actual button pressed, and skip option, and then some similar outputs here, except now we have a time left output that you can hook to, like, say, I don't know, sort of similar thing like a rumbler or something like that. Um, Now also keep in mind, there is no logic for UI side of things. So I imagine, like, I picture like being able to have like a circular, like just a circular text box that can like flash to indicate that you need to mash it or something like that, or some indication like a smaller circle that will enlarge and become the same size as like the outer circle to let you know that there's like a time limit, something like that. Haven't thought of it yet, but for now it's just the strictly logic side of processing the QTs. Um, so yeah, I think that's about all I have for the pitch. I guess if we decide to go forward with this, we could end up getting, a lot of gameplay mileage. I guess, despite people, people might complain that we have QTs, but to me, it's like, oh yeah, it is sort of like a game, like a traditional game that it has, like, even simple QTEs would be cool to have. Plus, people might give us bonus points for the ability to skip them as well. So there's that. And this will get everyone thinking on how to implement them in the game. So, uh, yeah, that's all I have. Hope to see everyone at Saturday's meeting. All right, see ya.